We're joined by our friend Karol Markowicz, host of the Karol Markowicz Show on the Clay and Buck Podcast Network, which, thanks to all of you, is growing every single month. And also Normally, which she co-hosts with Mary Catherine Ham, and that is doing fantastic numbers as well. So thank you all for your support. And Karol, great to have you on the program. Thank you so much.
Hi, Buck. Thanks so much for having me.
2 years, Karol, 2 years since the events of October 7th. I want to get into some of the policy-specific conversation in a moment with where Trump is trying to end this thing between the IDF and Hamas and all of that, as well as some other news of the day. But first, I just wanted to ask you to reflect on how you view this day and what you think about given what's happened over the last 2 years.
You know, the first thing I want to say is today is the first day of the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, and I'm not a super observant Jew. I should be better, but I'm not. But many observant Jews, our friend Josh Hammer, some other people, are offline today, so they can't commemorate October 7th. So I'm just so grateful for you and so many other people for noting this today in the absence of Jews being online, and I think that that's really incredible and special, and I feel just grateful to have you as, you know, an ally, as a friend, and to have non-Jews care about what's going on in Israel or with Jews in the world is so meaningful to me, and I hope that you know how much I appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Clay and I have felt very strongly about this issue from the very beginning and have felt like this was a clear case of right and wrong, not just, of course, on the horrible day of October 7th and what was done to Jews in Israel, but so much of what we saw afterwards, I think, was shocking to people, Karol, who haven't followed this issue and don't understand some of the dynamics at play. I mean, the calls for the calls for a ceasefire while the Israelis were still counting their dead and preparing to bury them was just an astonishing show of bad faith and, quite honestly, the worst kinds of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been just a really tough 2 years, I would say. And it's interesting because I went to Israel during that time, and they are so resilient and strong, and they're really, they've been prepared for how long this was going to take, and they understood it wasn't going to be overnight and all of that, and they want their hostages back so badly. But it has been a tough time to be a Jew in America, a Jew in the West. I have such faith in America and Americans, and I know that it's just a tough time right now. But it is hard to watch that commemorations of October 7th are taking place in our biggest cities, and they seem like celebrations, and they're Zionists, quote unquote, are being pushed out of various spaces. I mean, it's been going on the left for years and years. I wasn't very surprised about the reaction from the left on October 8th. I know a lot of people were, but I had seen it coming for the better part of a decade. I just hope the right doesn't follow them down that path. And like I said, I do feel very comfortable and so blessed that I feel like conservatives are largely on the right side of this, and that I do feel like I have allies standing with me.
Well, you know, Trump, I think, is a consistent ally and friend of the state of Israel, which is and sees this issue with the clarity that that it demands. And on that issue of clarity, you know, we've had you on, Karol, before to talk about the so-called genocide and the New York Times running a story with a photo as the primary photo of somebody who looks emaciated, having nothing to do with hunger. It's actually a birth defect, or a congenital birth issue that person had. And I think it's, to me, it always seemed like, hold on a second, there's not a genocide going on, and here's why. And we made that case before. This is a term, of course, that's thrown around with the additional salt in the wound of the genocide that was committed against the Jews in the Holocaust and World War II. So the opponents of Israel used this knowing the full implications of the term in this context. But now we have a peace plan, or at least a ceasefire plan, put forward with all of these steps. It's essentially Hamas has to stop fighting, hostages have to come back, and then there has to be some responsibility from the Palestinian side. And it seems like it's not a genocide because they say, no, we're going to keep fighting.
Right. It's amazing. The first victims of genocide ever to say, no, we're going to keep going. It's baffling to me that anybody cannot see what's going on here. And you're right, Trump is such a friend to Israel. I find his clarity on the matter to be breathtaking. And I make all of the Trump 2028 jokes in our chats because of it, because I really feel like he holds back a lot of the insanity around the world. And when Britain or France when they recognize, quote unquote, the Palestinian state, Trump sort of laughs at them and says, who cares what they think? And that's meaningful and amazing that an American president is such a leader on the world stage. But you're right. It's the idea that there's a genocide going on while that population of Palestinians in Gaza has actually grown in the last 2 years makes no sense. And it makes no sense that really chubby moms are holding starving babies, because that's generally not the way that it goes. So I'd love to see more clarity from other world leaders. There's some really good ones. The president of Argentina is amazing. The prime minister of Italy is fantastic. But in general, a lot of them are afraid of their Muslim populations or their leftist base, and they are really bringing down the idea of civilization around the world. It's not just about Israel. It's really a civilizational question that they would have to contend with in their own countries. What will our countries be with this unchecked immigration that we've allowed to go on? It's all tied together.
I would also note that if there was a starvation genocide underway, the photos of it would be everywhere, accessible and obvious. It would not be in the least bit difficult in the social media, internet era that we all live in to see this. And yet the reliance on photos by the biggest newspaper in the United States, for example, that is essentially a falsified premise, I think that speaks very loudly about what is going on here. What are the chances they just happen to pick a photo that doesn't depict what's going on if there are endless photos that would, right? I mean, that just makes no sense. You can supply logic to this and it falls apart.
Yeah, and they cropped out his healthy-looking brother out of the photo because they wanted to project that the starvation thing was happening, and the very healthy brother would show that that wasn't going on.
What is going on the right with, and you know what I'm going to ask you, Karol, but to the degree that we can cover some of this now, there seems to be some questioning and even some hostility to Israel specifically that I haven't seen from the right. On the left, it's been there for a long time.
Yeah.
But on the right, it seems like there's some problems bubbling up. Where is that coming from?
I don't want to ascribe bad motives to people. I'm not going to say they're all paid by Qatar, although it kind of seems like they're paid by Qatar. It really could be any number of things. I understand questioning foreign aid, for example. But if your questioning of foreign aid means that Israel should be the first country stripped of it, I'm sorry, that is not a real argument. And a lot of the time, there'll be people saying, we're allowed to criticize Israel. Of course you're allowed to criticize Israel. I criticize Israel. There's a million mistakes that I think Israel has made before and since October 7th. And you're absolutely allowed to criticize any number of things. But the idea is that Israel is allowed to exist and should exist, and that is Zionism. So it's really not that crazy to say Israel is a country, it exists, it's going to continue to exist, and we should support that. I hope the right doesn't get wound up in conspiracy theories, which is largely what a lot of this comes down to. And I get where it comes from. We were lied to again and again and again over the last decade, and I feel like people have lost all faith in everything. But you have to remember, not everyone is lying to you all the time, and you have to find the people that you trust, and they shouldn't be people who lie to you. If your favorite podcaster is telling you things that you know to be a lie, they're probably lying about other things as well, and that's how you should look at it. You should trust the voices that you listen to, and if you can't do that, then you shouldn't do it on anything.
I've begun to see finally, because I've been trying to make this case for a while, as somebody who was involved in some capacity among millions of other Americans, including those who actually served in the military. I was a civilian trying to do a part of what we call the GWAT, the Global War on Terror. But the level of violent hate that has been inculcated in some of these Middle Eastern societies, and specifically in the case of Gaza, I'm a little surprised that so many people on the right seem to have either forgotten or aren't able to draw the obvious parallels that they're not upset about foreign aid in Gaza. Mm-hmm. They're not upset about the lack of some, some agreement that would move things forward. They actually have been trained and taught to hate Jews and Israelis.
Yeah.
This is very straightforward, and I think this has gotten lost in the conversation, even on the right, for some, in a way that bears reminding everybody.
Yeah, I will say that poll after poll continues to show that the people on the right support Israel. And so no matter how many loud voices are trying to change that.
I think that's an important distinction you're making. Not to interrupt you. Keep going.
So far, it hasn't moved the needle at all. I would say that abortion is a more contentious issue on the right than Israel is. It's an overwhelming positive, supportive point of reference for the right on Israel. And so, I don't know what the motivations might be, but I will say that antisemitism is not a bigotry. And I think when people think of it as a bigotry, they get it all wrong. It's a mind virus. Once it grabs people, it's all they can think about. So again, if your favorite podcaster has suddenly become wall Israel, every single episode is Israel, 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 they're on a dark path. And it's not about Jews as a kind of culture. It's about a larger mind virus that will really swallow them up. And you've seen this happen in societies in history where once it gets going, it really doesn't stop. So I hope that the trend where the larger right just blocks out those voices continues, and that's what I'm going to be looking.
What are you going to be talking about this week on Normally, Karol?
So Normally just celebrated our 1-year anniversary, Buck. Mary Catherine Ham and I completely didn't realize the date, so it's actually a year and a week and a half or so. But we're really thrilled to be on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton podcast network. It's been amazing. We cover news of the day in a funny way, and I hope your listeners will tune in.
Yeah, no, you guys are doing ladies, I should say, are doing a great show.
And I love it.
Yeah, Karol, thank you so much for being here.
Thank
Appreciate
you,
talking to you as always, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much.
2 years ago, we woke up to the horrific news from Israel that terrorists were on a rampage, slaughtering innocent civilians. By the end of the day, the death toll was 1,200, with 250 people taken hostage. The equivalent to that in the U.S. would be 40,000 Americans, to give you a sense of the magnitude. Americans have supported the people of Israel for the past 2 years in big and small ways, with the help of the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. One way is by joining a growing movement called Flags of Fellowship. The Flags of Fellowship unites churches across America, planting over 1 million Israeli flags across our country. Show the world that Israel is not alone. To get more information about how you can join the Flags of Fellowship movement, visit ifcj.org. That's ifcj.org.
Hey, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
And be sure to hit that like button.